Hi, friends. Logan Clements here with the Better Events podcast. And in this week's episode, I'm sitting down with Dana Pake to talk about one of the harder things I would say in life to talk about, but a piece of life that I think really touches on events and what we do. And that is going to be talking about the power of grief and how that plays a role in these gatherings and events that we create. I loved this conversation that I got to have with Dana. We were actually in person together here in Seattle, and she was one of our BepCon speakers. And I think this conversation is a really important one, no matter if you are someone who has been dealing with grief recently, grief has felt very heavy for you, or maybe you're not as familiar with some of the more traditional definitions of grief, but you might have experienced it in a different way. I also want to caveat that if this is something that doesn't feel like you can listen to it right now based on where you are in your own life, I do encourage you just to save it and come back to it when you feel ready to listen. But this is a surprisingly uplifting conversation. There are emotional pieces that come into it, but there is also a lot of joy here in this episode. So I can't wait for you to listen to it. And without further ado, let's get into the episode.
Welcome to the Better Events podcast. Join two event strategists, Logan Clements and Mary Davidson, who believe we can all create, host, and attend better events. In this podcast, you will learn about event strategy and actions that you can use today as an event host, planner, or manager. Hear directly from the people who are creating innovative and inspiring events today and tomorrow, and grow your business along the way. Now, let's get started, and thanks for listening to the Better Events podcast.
Hi, friends. Logan Clements here with the Better Events podcast. I'm thrilled to welcome our guest, Dana Pake, and she is the founder of Lalago Gathers, a strategy and experience design studio that creates high-touch, story-rich gatherings for brands including GitHub, Vercel, and Brain Trust. Her practice is built on coherence design, making sure every consequential detail that shapes an experience is intentionally connected and felt by those in the room and back of house. Drawing from lived experience with grief and a current path of study as a death doula, Dana designs experiences that honor thresholds, nervous system care, and genuine human connection. She believes event professionals are not simply planners, but guides who create conditions for trust and transformation, one gathering at a time. Is there anything else you want to add to that, Dana?
No, I think that pretty much encapsulates where I'm at right now and is my truth. But, in a couple months, ask me, it might change a little bit.
I love that. Yes, that it can be lived and kind of evolve with time.
Totally.
And if anyone is watching, I do want to say we are recording together in person. So I am thrilled Dana is in my neighborhood here in Seattle, and I thought we should kind of be together for this topic. But a little bit about why we invited Dana to join us. Dana, you might recognize her from BepCon this past year here in Seattle. She gave a lightning talk all about grief and gatherings. And this is something that personally I've talked about here on the podcast, but I have had a pretty heavy grief year last year. There was, I lost two people that I was super close with, one including the parent of my partner, my mother-in-law, and that just kind of really was I would say, gravity shifting experience for me, and something that I couldn't compartmentalize and not have it impact my work. And so when Dana and I've kind of known each other over the years, and I'd seen you talk about some of your death doula practicing that you're doing, that I was like, I wanted to have you come speak at the conference. I'm really glad. I loved the session. I feel like it sparked a lot of interest from folks, and just kind of maybe challenge some of the taboo that is around talking about death and grief. And there's some beautiful things that can kind of come out of experiencing that. But before we jump into our interview, I do want to kind of do a bit of a disclaimer for our listeners that we are going to be discussing death and grief and the grieving process. And so we wanted to give you a heads up. If this is something that feels maybe too soon for you or too real based on your own personal experience, I encourage you to, pause here and come back when it feels right for you. If you are someone who hasn't fully experienced grief, I still think there's things in this episode that will apply to you, because we create experiences and events where you're going to have folks who are going through this and actively carrying grief with them. And so there are going to be some learnings for you in this conversation. So this is a good place to pause if you think you need to come back at another time. But I'd love to jump in.
Yeah. Before we do, can I ask you really quickly, what was your mother-in-law's name?
Her name was Jeannie.
Jeannie.
Yeah. And she is a very magical human. I feel like we still talk about her all the time.
What was one of your favorite memories about Jeannie?
Oh, Jeannie is just a all-around rock star. I feel like she was such a big influence on my partner and his life. And so I like always envision her carrying these 5-gallon buckets outside filled with weeds or rocks or water or something heavy, because she was just very strong and able to get around in the garden and just kind of do things on her own, fiercely independent. That was always so cool.
I have this vision, and you were sharing that where her farm was, but thank you. And I think it's important to just ask about those people. They still can be alive and with us in different ways. Just thank you for sharing your story. I know that's grief's hard to talk about and to share. But what I have found is it is with so many of us in this business to create conditions for human connection that I am finding when we are able to share our grief in ways that are appropriate and that feel comfortable for everyone. There's no deeper connection when you can turn towards someone's pain.
Yeah. Well, and I think it wasn't something I realized, but like my advice when I had friends, when we lost my mother-in-law, who asked, what can I do, or how can I help you and your partner Archie? And I was like, honestly, talking about her is probably the best thing. And it was something I was realizing is a lot of people were afraid, to your point, to even say their name or bring them up because they thought it would be, a really sad thing. And I was like, it's nice to talk about them and to remember them and to keep those memories top of mind so that you're not losing them.
Totally.
And the fear that folks had, that I was like, my biggest piece of advice if you have someone going through grief was like, just don't push it, but also be open to like, that questions you asked of what was a favorite memory or what reminds you of her or anything. I feel like is the better part versus acting like it's this big invisible elephant in the room and you don't want to accidentally bump into it.
It makes it more awkward, and then there's a heaviness around it, and there's already so much tension. And I think I would add to that, if you are with somebody or in proximity to somebody that is actively in grief, or it maybe doesn't even have to be active, it can just be dormant and all of a sudden it comes up. You don't even know what the moment is that it's going to bring it. It could be a song you're playing at your event. It could be someone walks by and looks like that person. But is to just know it's not your job to fix it. It can't be fixed, right? I think the beauty and the connection is to turn towards it and just say, I see you. Are you okay? What would you like to talk about? Or do you need space? And sometimes when someone's actively in grief too, they don't know what they want. It's hard to know. You just don't even know. Your world is so unstable that I think just the act of showing up, just need to show up, whatever that looks like. Don't ask for permission, in certain ways, like just to bring the food or to, hey, I'm right next door. Or I'm a phone call away.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a lot to put on someone in grief when they're like, what can I do for you? That's such an overwhelming question.
Yeah.
But it also is variable, and everybody walks through grief in a different way. And as I think about events we create and what we do is to recognize we got to meet people where they're at. And not everybody is going to show up in the same energetic space or emotional or spiritual space. And that's the same with grief. Grief is wild in what it does to people. And there's no wrong or right way to do grief or be with grief.
Yeah, that was definitely a challenge I faced, where I was looking for some prescriptive answers to how I was feeling and what I was processing. And I was a little disappointed, and then was like, well, of course, no duh. It's going to be different for everybody and every case. And even like I'd lost grandparents in the past, but losing my mother-in-law was a different level of grief and a different level of having someone in my life that was going through something even deeper than I did. I only knew her for about 8 years, and he knew her whole life. And then my second experience last year was then I lost my grandpa, and his name was Gene. So it was fun. It was interesting. Dad, Jeannie, right? And Gene. Yeah. My mom's dad. We lost him last fall, and he was one of my closer grandparents that had a big impact on raising us and things like that. It was just like both of those were different and unique, and not a way that I could rank which one was better or worse, but it was just the compounding effect of both and what I would need in those moments. It wasn't copy paste of like, oh, this helped in March, now this will help me in October. And that was not the case. Yeah.
And, coming into this conversation, I want to acknowledge I am not a grief expert. I am just someone who has lived through a lot of it. And I think what we do as experienced designers, my part in the grief work is really about practicing presence and being attuned. We can't know what everybody is going through, but when we are so present in the room and are attuned to certain people, you can see when someone's not okay. And you don't have to be intrusive, but it's just are you okay? And invite the invitation, or invite the conversation, and just take their lead on it. But I just wanted to just be, it's such a complex topic that I am sensitive to. There are people who are professionals in dealing with grief, and they all belong. And I would love to collaborate with some of them as we think about how do we make a place for grief in the room in a way that is not about, my goodness, trauma porn, or it's just really, I go back to just meeting people where they are. And I think about what we do, again, whether it's a sports tournament, a tech conference, a gala, we have this noble job of creating these containers where people can be seen, heard, understood, valued, and held. It's amazing. I love that part of our job, and it's really about helping people know that they matter. But in that, in honoring that grief, there are good ways to do that, and maybe not so good ways. And I think that is much like a lot of our work. It is a collaborative conversation.
Yeah.
And what belongs in what type of event.
Yes.
And where you're at. This is, by no means am I saying that every event should have a grief corner. It's just really at first just starting with the designers and the teams to know that, one, your teams may not be okay and maybe going through something, or your partners or your vendors, and just to check in with each other. And then to recognize most people who are coming into your spaces are in some form not okay. And when we think about grief, there's the loss of your mother-in-law and your grandpa, but grief takes all shapes and sizes. It could be the loss of a relationship, a pregnancy, an expectation, a friendship. If you are human, you will know a loss, and to lose is to know grief. And that's why I think it's so powerful when we think about how we design for human.
Yes to all of it. I am curious if you would be comfortable sharing how you first got interested in this intersection between death and gatherings and the grief process.
I think I have lived a life with a lot of grief, starting at a young age, knowing the grief of my parents' divorce, and then being parentified when I was 8. And then I lived on my own when I was still in high school. And then when I was 19, my dad committed suicide. And then soon after that, there was I come from a big Filipino family there who they all helped raise me. But there was a quick succession of lots of people dying. And then when you get into adulthood and the grief of identity and who you thought you were going to be. So it was something that has just been with me, and I thought a lot about, but it was like more of this intuition and not anything like I had institutionalized as part of the work. And then a couple years ago, a really dear friend of mine who's in the business, Marcus White, he was diagnosed with cancer in September and then passed away in December. It was very, very quick. And the interesting thing about that guy is he kind of initiated a lot of my crossing of key thresholds in my life. And I'm like, of course you would do it for death doula too. But so just this recognition that death and grief were always with me. And then I did this event with Marcus before he got sick too, where I ended up staying at this hotel called Bardo in Tulum, and I didn't know what Bardo was. And my coach was, who's a very deeply spiritual person, said, do you know Bardo is a Buddhist practice? I'm like, tell me more about that. Didn't know. I just thought it was a really cool venue. And it essentially, you know, I'm not a Buddhist, so I may be butchering this a little bit, but it's just this idea that we are constantly in a state of death and transformation. So the women that we showed up to this conversation as today are not going to be the women we leave as. And it's just this acknowledgement that we're constantly dying and being reborn. And then when I think about how we architect these experiences, we are guides through thresholds. So the connection is more obvious than I think I had realized. But the thing that blew it open for me was Marcus's diagnosis and actively being by his side and his partner's side through that process. And also I came across this woman named Alua Arthur. Her book is escaping me. Again, the menopause brain. Also another form of grief, y'all. My brain doesn't work like the way it used to. But she was a corporate attorney, and she had this life-changing experience when she went to Costa Rica. She had burned out. I had too. I'd been in tech for a long, I mean, I'm still, my clients are in tech, but I was in it. And she had this life-changing conversation with a woman in Costa Rica who was dying. And Alua just asked her very straightforward questions about, how do you feel about dying, in ways that her family or her friends were too scared to have that conversation. And I felt like I didn't know what a death doula was. That's how that podcast I had listened to really opened my eyes. And I don't know that it is a practice that I will do in the way that Alua does. I actually got to talk to her about it. Like, in many ways, I am death dueling through experience design.
Yeah.
But that was a lot of words to answer a simple question, but it is a more complex answer, I think.
Yeah, for a complex topic, I think it really fits there. And very interesting. I like this Bardo concept. I'm like, I could even just see an event professional adopting even just that phrase of just saying you are a different person than we are in this exact moment than you will be 2 hours from now or a day from now. And that I know is when we think getting out of kind of the emotional part and the logistics part, it's like, well, that's what everyone hopes that happens at their events. But it's like, is that true in how you design it and how you create that experience, so that it is a true statement that, yes, I'm different from when I started, when I finished. Maybe the Buddhist side is it's always going to be different, but maybe you're just only marginally different versus massive shift.
That's it though, Logan. I'm glad you said that. It doesn't need to be, it's just incremental. Yeah. Right. And I think part of it, and that's why I really put a lot of thought into what coherence is. It's real, that for me is just really intentionality, because your attendees can leave transformed in some way. And a woman I work with in a mastermind, she talks about how to have an experience means you are changed in some way. There is a shift, but without the intentionality, are you guiding people to the right kinds of transformation that might be positive for them versus they can have a pretty crummy experience at your event and they are changed because you've changed their opinion. Yep. Inadvertently or not. Yeah. But I don't think it needs to be so overly engineered or that it takes a lot of money. What it does take is a lot of thought and intentionality and sincerity.
Yeah. Well, hopefully someone perked up of not hearing a lot of money that you have to do any of that, because that is what I think some people are like, well, I don't have the funds to add or do any of those things. But we'll get a little tactical later. You kind of answered this a bit, but if you want to elaborate any more about what your own grief experience taught you about the power of connection.
I think it's my grief experience has taught me how to be attuned to the room. And I know, or suspect, a lot of your listeners follow Will Guidara and Unreasonable Hospitality. And I have had the privilege of being both at Welcome Conference and most recently a couple of months ago in Nashville at the Unreasonable Hospitality Summit. And one thing that I witnessed in Will, with all of the success he has had in this movement he has created with hospitality, is it's clear his work is grief informed. And if you know his story and about his mom, who he lost like right before he graduated from college, but she had some diagnosis where she was wheelchair bound and he had to take care of her after school. And it was just a beautiful love story to his mom. and I will bring this back around to my work too, but what I witnessed in him is that he is so, again, attuned and paying attention to people and energy in the room. And I think people who've gone through grief in deep ways, myself included, you show up in these spaces wanting to care for people in the way you were cared for. Mm. And that can be an incredible superpower in what we do, and it can be kryptonite. Yeah. And I get emotional talking about it because sometimes you forget to take care of yourself when you so deeply want to care for others in the room. But, I turned 50 in October, and there's so much more wisdom on this side. And I think the grief informing what I do is that it's, again, the recognition of, man, people are at different stages in life and different stages in grief. And if really it just comes down to how do you design for compassion? Yeah. It doesn't have to be this overt thing. Mm-hmm. It's just, seeing people as people. In my business, it is, at the end of the day, I recognize I'm selling software. At the end of the day, that's the job. Yeah. But man, what would that look like if we did it in a way where Logan comes in the room and I just know, Logan, you were in this riffraff of this frenetic energy at this conference. What can I get you right now? Do you need some what? We just remove friction for people to just downshift. Yeah. So that they can be in a place where conversations resonate and they can be seen as a person and not a lead. That for me is really the work, because behind all of that, I know there are things I may not know the specifics of what you, Logan, are carrying, but I know you're carrying something. I can make some assumptions in my world in tech. It's so disorientating with AI coming after people's jobs that thought they were so secure before. And you just don't know what tomorrow looks like. But the power of what we do is you realize you're not alone. Yeah. You are not alone. And that fellow attendee may not have gone through your same experience, but they might be able to offer something because of what they have gone through, and you in turn something to them. So for me, this whole thing, everything that I do now too, and where grief has informed that, is it's an ecosystem, and we are meant to take care of each other. And this makes me emotional too. We are not meant to do any of this alone. We all have something we need, and we all have something to give, and it becomes less, I don't know. I think, we're more alike than we are different, and everyone's just looking for safety. And sometimes it doesn't feel like it can feel safe to ask for help because you're for fear of I'm underperforming or I don't have all the answers, even though nobody has the answers ultimately. But I think it's a powerful thing, and I've seen it in action. When you can offer some kind of help, then it's easier to ask for it. And it doesn't mean helping the person who may have helped you. It's paying it forward. And I don't say it lightly. It has become a very spiritual practice for me, the work I do day to day. But I do think it's how we heal the world, is just one act of kindness at a time. Ugh. Because you leave that space energetically, oh man, somebody saw me. Yeah. And so then you will leave that door, you'll leave that threshold. And in that slight moment of someone seeing you and recognizing, oh, you like Diet Coke at 2:00. I got that for you. No problem. Yeah. When you are now at the coffee shop or whatever, you are going to find a moment to repay that kindness, if not in the room with another peer. Yeah. I will always say I'm such a rational person that I was I wasn't very woo and believed in energy and things. And over the years, oh dang, have I evolved a bit of just putting things into the ether, that it's not transactional, where if I do something for you, do something for me. It's I did something, and hopefully that person then does something nice for someone else. But what you were saying in there too about seeing humans where they're at, I get it with production teams that I work with, where I'm always we need to take care of basic needs of just, do we have access to water, to bathrooms nearby, to snacks, to some coffee if we're asking people to work a 16-hour day. Yes. Some of this, I was if we haven't taken care of those, it's really hard to ask somebody to perform at a high level, not even thinking of them necessarily as I'm trying to make you be seen as a human, but more I'm taking care of what your basic needs are,
so that we can do something interesting together. And that's something I always am pushing with. It sounds so simple, but I still have to push with it for clients or the shows I show up with that we don't have access to water, that it's like, we have to go buy water right now, because if someone's, again, physical needs, that it's like, I can't even get into the emotional needs of anybody if we're not taking care of that piece first.
I love that you brought that up, because my team, we are always so intentional, and we say to our clients, like, who's taking care of the people, taking care of the people. If the teams, your team, the back of house, if they are not resourced, you better believe that is going to have an impact on your program. And when we do pre-cons, I ask for not just the banquet captain and the GM. I want to know who are the leads. I want to know their names. I want to look them in the eye. I want to say, Rosa, what you and your team are doing here, this is a person for real, what you're doing in the space to keep it clean is just as important as what my CMO is doing to bring people in here. We can't do, again, we need one another.
Yeah.
And it makes me scratch my head a little when, like, that's a conversation that even needs to be had. Like, what? But they see, with the really cool thing, I did this program with GitHub at Amazon last December. And the quick version of it is all of our teams were so resourced that it was vibrational, that the venues team came in with just higher energy and kindness, that then GitHub's team was able to show up in that way. And then the attendees felt it. And then they didn't even know what they wanted until they were in there. And then we had this one woman who was running late who came in just like a bat out of hell. And I was outside of the venue, like it's this open space. I could feel her before I saw her. And the wild thing was, I was like, oh, dang, I've been her.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is so important, and it starts with your own teams, and it's the teams you don't see that really carry a room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, well, and I wanted to get your insight on kind of how, because seeing the full human piece, when I lost my mother-in-law, I was trying to figure out how to handle it, because to me it was like a car crash. It was a cancer diagnosis, so it was a car crash I knew was going to happen, but I couldn't have told you when. And I knew it would be devastating. It was devastating in the process, knowing that information, and it would be devastating when it happened. And I, as a business owner, was like, and a planner, I was like, I need to kind of tell some of my clients, but also I can't tell them a definite answer of like, oh, this is going to happen. It's going to impact your program. And so the approach I took, once we found out just kind of how imminent her passing was going to be, I had any of my clients, I was like, just so you know, this, I have this, my grandmother or my mother-in-law is sick. I'm helping kind of just support my partner through that. But I do know, should she pass, I'm going to have to stop what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Because I don't know. And I said a lot of I don't knows in this whole process, because with my partner, we both were like, I don't know. I was like, I don't know how to do this.
Yeah.
I definitely going to say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing.
No
but like,
playbook.
That's what I was like. I just know I had to pause. So I proactively was telling people, and because I was like, I'd rather versus me just fall off the face of the earth for a week, 2 weeks. I didn't know how long it would take. And it did help. I feel like once it did happen, that the people, everyone I was working with knew, I didn't have to explain much. I just said, she's passed. I'm not online this week. And everybody was fine professionally. Everyone was fine. And then it was the aftermath was the interesting part for me, where, again, those that knew I went through it, and I went back on site to an event maybe 2 weeks later, and the person who'd hired me and been my close point of contact, I kind of pulled her aside and I was like, I don't know what I need. And so there is a chance there's two of us here. So like, if I have to disappear for a minute, know that I'm not disappearing. I just don't know what, to your point, a song, a memory, something. Like, I was like, I don't know how I'm going to feel. I also might be a robot and just not compartmentalize it and just do my job all day, but I don't know. And I was happy that I was able to be empowered to have that conversation, but it did make me then aware of like teammates that I work with who have just met me in that last hour as their show caller are probably not going to be comfortable letting me know what's going on in their lives that would impact them walking. If someone just walked off the job, all of a sudden I'm panicking, thinking it's something we did.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious if you had any thoughts or anything on how
I think
you kind of handled it.
What you did is beautiful. You were honest.
Yeah.
You don't know. And I think, you also don't owe, how do I want to say this? You don't owe too much of an explanation. You don't have to share so much, but just to let people know where you're at and that you're not okay and you don't know the next step. But, you know, from the client side, you're going to be taken care of. I've made sure that, you know, the program's going to go. But I think as a leader, Logan, it was an incredibly powerful and beautiful thing that you did to show that we're all human.
Yeah.
And leaders are too.
Yeah.
And when you can model that to your team and your partners, then you give permission for them to share that story. And again, everyone's just scared. Like if I say this, if I say I don't know, doesn't mean like I'm not competent at my job or they're going to go look for somebody else. I think, in fact, it's very different what you did. Like you built trust.
Thank you.
I think in the honesty of just where you were at. And then I think people then know, because you had shared a little bit about your journey, that they could step in for you and not feel like they were stepping over you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I was again, I was like, part of me, I went back and it was a question of, did you go back too early or anything? And I was like, my gut says I can go back and do this. And, you know, and it was fine. But the person kind of pushed back a bit, being like, you don't feel like you have to, which again, I think was their knee-jerk reaction to not knowing what I needed. But I was like, sometimes it's nice to have that distraction. And then I had it come up again on a show that I was on earlier this year where I had a teammate on again, I think we have to do some very interesting things as producers and show callers sometimes where I don't get to meet people until we're on site. And I have hours to motivate you and get to know you and get you to trust me. And then we have to do some really awesome stuff in very high pressure situations. And I had a teammate that was just giving me some friction on certain things I said. And I was like, I can't tell. And again, I was like, it's probably not about me, but I'm not sure. And I couldn't tell you exactly how I got into it, but I found myself at a lunch with him and I ended up just kind of offhand mentioning, I was like, yeah, it's so crazy. We have all this life stuff happening outside of it. I think he mentioned, he's like, I just have some life stuff happening. And I was like, oh, I hear you. I just went through this really grief heavy year the last year. I've never probably talked more about my personal life than I felt like I needed to in this past year, just to like clue people in. On what's going on with me, because I'd rather name it than have them assume that I am not responsive to things. And me sharing that had him then open back up to me about some deep personal stuff he was going through that was like, the more he talked about, the more I was like, oh my gosh, how are you even sitting here right now? Like, I can get why you were frustrated or you're being short with me about certain things. And it did shift our dynamic after that. And it wasn't something I called him out in front of everyone. It was literally a one-on-one conversation that we had. But it was when I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't know there was a power in what I've experienced that, to your point, can help me be better in tune with other people. Because all you think about are the sad and awful parts of grief and not necessarily some of the parts that help you, you know, continue to be a better human.
It's the paradox, right, of the beauty and brutality of it. And I heard once too that wound, that grief is where God is, and insert whatever God means to you. For me, it's love. And I think, did you all feel more connected after that?
I'd say yes.
And you don't have to be like deep friends, but you witnessed one another, right? And that's where connection is. And I think that's where you can have compassion for. I've said to my kids, like, I bring up a coffee story again. Sometimes you see a barista who's just in the weeds and they are not friendly, can't even look you in the eye. And you know, one of my girls is like, geez, what's their problem? I'm like, well, I don't know. Look around. Look at all these people who are grumpy waiting for their coffee. It doesn't seem like she has a lot of help. We don't know what's going on at home. Maybe a parent is sick or she broke up with her boyfriend. How about, oh, Logan, I really like your earrings and you're doing a really great job. Thank you. Watch what happens when you witness somebody in that, and their head lifts and their shoulders go down and the whole vibration of the room can change just by you witnessing and being kind.
Yeah.
And the inviting the conversation, right? Like, and 9 times out of 10, it isn't about you.
Yeah. Which that's when I love my like pep talk to registration staff. I do 2 events a year where I work with volunteers and I'm always like, whatever, which again, now I don't realize it maybe is slightly grief informed, but it was like, we don't know what someone is bringing into this situation. They might have had trouble parking. They might have had their train missed them and they stepped in a puddle. I don't know, but I was like, they're going to be coming at you with all this energy. And your job is to make sure that energy doesn't necessarily, especially if it's negative, seep into what you do and make you feel rushed or panicked or anything. I was like, they're bringing their energy in. you're just here as the calming presence, that we have our 3 steps. We need to check them in and get them into the room, get them the information they need. And then if anybody was extra flustered, I was the internally called trouble table that I could then deal with anyone who was more complicated than that. But I was like, every time, because I do think when I was more green in events, that was one that I would feed off of what the attendees were bringing versus realizing, yes, they might have had 17,000 bad things happen to them this morning, and it's not even 9 a.m. You know, me having a smile and just saying, how are you, could help recenter everybody.
You have incredible power as event designers and planners. Like, we control the weather.
Yeah.
I think it's to be empowered to understand that and what to do with that is a very it's a big responsibility when you recognize it. It's not just ops and logistics. You have so much influence on a person's day, week, just by that first touch point. Or there's Will Guidara does talk about this too, this culture of repair. Like it may not even be something that broke or a moment that you directly caused, but if you can in some way, and not in like a codependent way that I have to watch out for sometimes, but more so that, man, a little acknowledgement or just somebody seeing that, man, it's rough out there. I know, I feel you. Can I take your coat? Let me get you a coffee.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Or even knowing where the coffee is.
But just removing, I think a big part of it is just removing friction.
Yeah.
Just remove as much friction as you can. I always say it to my team, if they listen to this, they will laugh, because I am the best example of the worst attendee.
I love that.
I don't read. I have ADHD. My coach says, a very complicated relationship with earth-based time. I am just a zoo and come in with big energy when I come into a space sometimes. And I'm like, I just need somebody to point me where to go.
Yeah.
Let me take your coat. Here's your coffee. Keynotes right there. Restrooms there. If you need anything, come here or here. Oh, okay, great. Thanks.
Yeah.
I'm settled.
Yeah.
It doesn't take much.
No.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's important. You talked about how you can sense the energy in the space with those people, because I feel like sometimes the greeters or the folks that are your first point of contact with your attendees they're like brand ambassadors, which maybe you hire through a third party, and you don't even get to talk to them. Yeah. And that's when I was like, but those are the people. Or like, you and I both went to a concert experience this past weekend. Yeah. I said one of my favorite things about the performers on stage were like, you could just tell they were having fun. And when you can tell people are having fun, it's like, oh, I'm having fun because I want to be a part of whatever. Like, it's like magnetic. Yes. So it is interesting that like I would add to my list if I was planning a bigger event like this, of like making sure, to your point, you talk to those subgroups, not just your lead from that third party brand ambassadors, but like, can you huddle all the brand ambassadors together and give them a why, or give them a like that little, even the pep talk of like, hey, people might be stressed with parking, or flights got delayed, or they couldn't find their bag. Like, what could you do just to connect with them? Here's how it fits into whatever event culture kind of theme you're trying to hit on. Because that does make a big difference. I feel like if that experience, that first initial check-in, is haggard or stressful,
it sets the tone. It sets the tone for the rest of the experience.
Doesn't matter how big of an LED screen you have, or how much of $1 million, multi-million-dollar budget you have.
And all that money just is lost at that point, versus the very little time and energy it takes to train a human to greet another human and just remove the friction. And part of that, it's also, I have a lot of clients. I used to be that person too, was so afraid of a queue. I'm like, oh, a queue is a magical thing. You just need to know how to work it. To have those brand ambassadors, like, how's it go? What are you excited about? Who do you want to meet? I could get so much information when people are in a queue, and they just want to be seen. And just like when you're at a restaurant, thanks for being here. Really appreciate your patience. Looks like your table will be ready in 15 minutes. And even just saying to them, we're so glad you're here. We're going to get you through this line as fast as we can. Or when we've had long queues, we start rolling out sodas and coffees and just handing it to people. And then just like, again, remove the friction. But a queue is, I love a queue.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, I could keep talking to you for hours, but I want to know if there's anything else you want to add. And then where our listeners can stay in touch. Yeah,
I just wanted to thank you. It's such a big topic and can be a scary topic. And I think it was such a brave thing that you had invited me to bring it into your event, and then into the conversation here with everybody. So I just have a lot of gratitude to you and your leadership and making spaces for these conversations.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, I'm a little upset, I guess, that I didn't know about some of this stuff before having to experience it myself. But also hindsight's 2020. It is something that like, I hope my experience can help inform others or make you just feel less alone in that whole process. And I encourage any listeners, feel free to connect with you on LinkedIn.
I'm a little bit, I call it, if you know, really it's, what is that when the cobbler's kids have no shoes?
Fair.
So I don't have a website. I'm a little under the radar, but if anybody out there would love to continue the conversation around grief, I'd love to share in that with you, and you can just DM me on LinkedIn.
Yeah. And if you're interested too, I'm always open and happy to talk about my experience. I definitely fell into reading a lot of books on grief. I still have some books on my shelf right now to keep reading. Cause I guess, my big takeaway for listeners is just to realize like grief is not something that you are ever necessarily free from. I heard somebody describe it once like it's a red button in a room, and sometimes the room is very small, and so that button feels very big and you're going to hit it a lot. And then other times it's a really big room, but there's still a red button there and something might hit it for you. And just knowing it was something that'll never, to your point, the bardo, the change of there was a before and an after, and realizing like for my partner there was a before and now there's an after, and I can't solve, as a planner I want to solve things, I want to fix things, and it's something I can't fix or solve. And more leaning into what I'm learning through that process, what I'm realizing about myself, and what I do in events through that process is kind of what I have to anchor into versus trying to have all the solutions.
I'm glad you shared that. And one last thought, and I will share some with you. Are you reading Francis Weller?
I'm not.
Wild Edge of Sorrow. He's beautiful. But the way he describes grief is that it is a constant companion.
Yeah.
And you can befriend it, which sounds really weird, but I think in the befriending is when you open up more connection. But I'll send you some books that maybe you can put in the notes too that I have found as incredible resources.
Definitely. Yeah. I will put all of these books in the show notes. And thank you so much, Dana, for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dana. That was an amazing conversation. And like many of our guests, we could keep talking for hours. But that brings us to the end of our episode. This is our bonus tip this week is coming from me. Mary is still out on maternity leave. So my bonus tip for you this week is for big keynote speakers, make sure you double check their rider with them when they show up on site. And a rider is maybe a document you get ahead of time from the speaker or from their team that lets you know some of the things or items they are expecting. And I'm coming at this from an approach of a producer because I had a keynote speaker earlier this year that had a rider that was very specific, that he wanted pin lights on the podium so that he could look at his notes. He likes to have handwritten notes or printed notes, and he wanted lights on the podium so he could see his notes. We bent over backwards, made this happen, including sending a stage manager out there last minute to troubleshoot it. And he walked out on stage and he didn't have any notes. And I was like, he's going to reach into his pocket. Nope. No notes. And so it's just a little reminder to you that maybe you don't have to double check their food and their drink requirements if those come to you, but anything that's like tech related, either try to get ahead of that and just double check, hey, does this apply to our event? Or when they're on site, that would have been an easy adjustment for us to make and not put them out there if we'd known when we got him in the 20 minutes before he went on stage that he actually, part of his rider didn't apply to our specific event. So just double check those riders and see what actually applies to you, and you might save yourself a little bit of a headache. That brings us to the end of the episode. You can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn at Better Events Pod. You can email us at bettereventspod@gmail.com. You can also connect directly with Mary, myself, or Dana on LinkedIn. Just let us know when you hit that connect button. Write a little note that says you heard about us through the podcast. We love hearing from you. And if you want more Better Events content, join our private paid community over on Substack, where you get access to bonus content as well as our Slack channel. As always, we want to thank you for listening, and we'll be back in your feeds again next Wednesday.